Zelinsky in the Oval Office the other day. That was quite remarkable. A lot of people are asking me, do I think that was a setup? The answer would be yes and no, meaning we're hearing that Zelinsky was acting badly before the cameras started rolling. And so I think they all had enough of him. They'd had their, you can't drink my water, Dolly. They had the fill of him. And yet at the same time, remember Lindsey Graham walked out in front of the White House after that whole stunt and said that I told Zelinsky not to take the bait. So I don't know. Was it staged? Not if you mean were all the people actors. No. Was it planned? I think it was an option depending on how Zelinsky behaved himself. I think they had multiple, ways it could go, and they knew it. If he comes in here and acts like a appreciative, humble, decent individual and signs the deal without a lot of fuss and drama, then we're good. But if he doesn't, let's just expose him. In fact, President Trump said that sitting there in the meeting to Vance, did he not? I think this is good for the American people to see. Well, as we know, Europe, he leaves. By the way, Zelensky cursed in Russian at the vice president. In Russian, he cursed at him. We played the video the other night. We've had it confirmed by Russian-speaking individuals. Then he goes over to Europe, where he curses at President Trump. And Europe says, hey, Stormer, Prime Minister over there in Europe, says, in Great Britain, we're gonna put boots on the ground and planes in the air. Let's not forget Stormer is a part of the Trilateral Commission. We got to have a good crisis. Don't let a crisis go to waste. Here's the question. Are they going to try to draw America into this? Let's start World War III, and then let's see if we can draw America into it. Now, how would you draw America into it? Well, one way you could draw America into it is to allow for them to cause terrorist attacks, even if they're deep fake terrorist attacks. We're going to get a report from Colonel Rob Maness on this today, too, in the hour. But I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I thought, well, if Europe goes to war with Russia, because they really seem like they want to get rid of Putin, the Europeans do, the globalist. I guess, again, nation building. He's not going along with the New World Order. Neither did Saddam Hussein, neither did Gaddafi. Those guys were talking about going onto a gold standard, so they had to go. It seems the globalists are after Putin. I'm not a defender of Putin, but it seems as though they really want him gone. So if they go to war, how do they drag America into it to further bring down America? Because remember, the globalists want to collapse America. The globalists know that America cannot be this haven of free speech, freedom of religion, capitalism. What are they doing in Europe? They're arresting you for posting very benign, common sense, national security, and religious convictions online. And you get arrested. While they let the Islamists run free. And you got another terrorist attack today in Germany. They want to bring down America. So let's get America involved in a war. Let's go ahead and start World War III, and then let's see if they can draw in America. Well, how would they draw in America? Maybe they have, I'm just guessing out here, loud here, maybe they have staged terrorist attacks in America and blame it on Russia. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, that's a bridge too far. Well, anyone saying that doesn't understand this government, or in the deep staters inside the government, or the globalist. Remember, it was people from the Pentagon during the John F. Kennedy administration with Operation Northwoods that said, hey, maybe we can stage terrorist attacks in Florida, blame it on Cuba, so the American people have a stomach to invade Cuba. And President Kennedy's like, get out of my office. So don't put that past these guys. Look at this headline. Look at this headline I found today. Let's see. I posted a couple articles I thought was pretty. Here we go. Pete Hegseth orders U.S. spies to disregard Russian cyber threats to focus on China and Iran. So you do a, quote, cyber attack on America, you blame it on Russia, and you can say, well, Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration disregarded the threat from Russia, and now we got a cyber attack from Russia. Was it really from Russia? I had another article today. I saw another one today as well. Here's one. Trump rips McMaster. We should spend less time worrying about Putin. So again, you can see the narrative. They already have the narrative. They could say the Trump administration did not pay attention to Putin. They didn't see Putin as a threat. And yet now we have terrorist attacks in America from Russia. The question would be, was it really Russia doing it? Thought I had another article here that kind of fit in with that. If I find it during the program, I'll bring it back up to you and show you. But be very, very aware of manipulation. I'm not a defender of Putin. But I also want to speak the truth and give fair and accurate reporting. And I don't think Putin wants World War III. But I think the globalists do. And I certainly don't want, as I've warned, for a draft for your children or grandchildren. We said if President Trump got reelected, don't be shocked if they try to do something to pull the rug out from underneath him like they did with COVID. Another pandemic or plandemic, an economic crisis of some kind. World War III, terrorist attacks, or all the above. The globalists want to stop Donald Trump, who's going now into, week 6 of his administration, second term. Let's get to some of it now. I'm joined, before we go to Aaron, I'm joined by Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Good afternoon, Brandon.
So, Colonel, now there's talk about NATO meeting. They're having their meeting. I guess a bunch of the leaders, and they have not invited the United States to be a part of it. Yeah, I think we're like the biggest funder of NATO. Are we about to pull out of NATO, America? And should we?
Well, quite honestly, the way the Europeans are sounding, they don't sound very trustworthy. I don't know if you saw the little tweet that came out of Europe this morning. I think it was from some member of parliament in one of the countries that said, why don't we just confiscate all the U.S. military bases in Western Europe and Eastern Europe? I myself have posted on X that we should seriously consider removing all of our extended deterrence NATO nuclear capability because they can't be trusted. And that relationship and that capability is built on absolute trust between the United States and the countries that we let maintain it for us. So we have a lot of thinking about this to do. And the Europeans are not making it any easier when the UK Prime Minister promises to put UK boots on the ground. He's not talking about the Islamist people they've let come through his open border. He's talking about British nationals that are British born and not all these illegal aliens that they've let in that are killing all their people. So when he talks about putting those boots on the ground, what do you think is going to happen when the UK becomes an actual belligerent in the war by being present in Ukraine in the war zone? Well, Vladimir Putin and the Russians have long and medium-range ballistic missiles that have conventional warheads and some non-conventional warheads that aren't nuclear or biological, and they're going to use them. And you think they're going to use them on anything on like Russian or UK troops in the Ukraine? No, they're going to use them on strategic targets. Where are those strategic targets? London. Manufacturing in the rest of NATO that might be manufacturing pieces of the British Armed Forces military gear. All of those they're already legitimate targets because, quite frankly, NATO has become a belligerent by choice, as is the United States. But to actually put it in the face of them is the next level of escalation up that escalatory ladder that we've talked about. And the Brits should expect attacks on their cities and on their manufacturing capability and on their military installations inside their country.
So how do they drag America into this World War III? Do you think they want to drag America into it?
Just like what I said, they put UK boots on the ground, maybe some French boots on the ground, which we pushed back very aggressively against when that came up a few weeks ago. And then the country of the UK is attacked by the Russians. And the way Article 5 and Article 6 of the NATO articles and the NATO treaty read, that's when the trigger of an attack on one is an attack on all.
But that's if we stay.
When
that's
it's within the UK's territory.
But that's if we
stay in NATO. If we're currently in NATO when that happens, well, if we're currently in NATO as part of the treaty, when that happens, then we are stuck with looking at an Article 5 situation. Does that mean that we have to take kinetic action and those kind of things? No, it doesn't, because it says at the discretion of the member country in Article 5, and that is where we're going to have to make some decisions if that occurs, because, NATO came to us under Article 5 when we were attacked on 9/11, the British, the French. I mean, everybody played in the war effort at the beginning of that, and that's the only time Article 5's ever been invoked under the NATO treaty. So it's going to be a major issue when that time comes, and that's what they're exactly trying to do. That's what Zelinsky wants to happen. That's what Starmer wants to happen. Obviously, if he's going to put British boots on the ground inside Ukraine, that opens the door to those types of attacks. And Article 6, it limits Article 5 response only to attacks on those member states' territories in Europe and in the northern hemisphere of the western hemisphere. So we have to really look at this very carefully about withdrawing not just our nuclear capability from NATO, but withdrawing from NATO altogether because of that situation.
So what if we're not a part of NATO? How would they then seek to draw in the U.S.? In other words, as I said before, we go to break here, I'll let you answer on the other side. If we were to see some false flag attacks in America or cyber attacks in America, and we know from Operation Dragonfly, Russia and China are already in our power grid, according to public documents that came out during the first Trump term, and Dr. Peter Pry of the EMP Commission documented a lot of that as well. So you've already got enough information out there to say Russia did this, Russia did this. Even if Russia didn't, they could play on all these news stories that we have archived and know to be legitimate news stories. Could they have false flags, blame them on Russia, and use that to put pressure on President Trump to get involved? We'll get an answer on the other side. Don't go away. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepcid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. Hey, last night, lesson 31. I've done now 31 hours on the book of Revelation. And last night we got into Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. We got about 8 or 9 verses in. And last night, Logan tells me that while I was live on a Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central, we had at least a minimum of 6,000 people streaming. Minimum. He said he could go in and add in some of the other platforms that we're on and probably add more to that. And I said, but that's with just one person per stream. If you have two people watching, which is generally the case, a husband and wife, I mean, those are good numbers. I say, can you imagine a church service, walking into a church service on Sunday night, and you got 6,000 people there sitting there waiting for someone to teach on the book of Revelation? You would say, that is a gigantic church service. That's a lot of people that want to hear about Revelation, 6,000. Well, that's exactly what happened last night. We had our church service last night, 8 p.m. Central at worldviewtube.com. Spent so much time this week studying and preparing for the lesson, which I love to do. And I put on some classical music, and I study. And I do a lot of that for hours on Saturday and Sunday. And if it's cold enough, I love to start a real fire in the fireplace and sit at the desk with my classical music playing and study all day. And Melissa, she likes to use the time to clean the house and do laundry and cook. And then we get together in the evening and spend some time together. So it's a great time for both of us because we're both able to do things we want to get done. She spends a lot of time with customer support, donor relations on the phone. But I don't have to worry about running and getting on television and all that. I just get to spend hours studying, and I just really enjoy it. And then I get to present it to you where I've learned so much and turn around and teach what I've learned. And so last night, Logan said you had at least a minimum of 6,000 streams going. And if you add a couple people per stream, that's 12,000. That's a big church service. And he said it would have been more than that if we added in some more platforms. And then you had the replay. What's the point I'm making? There are people that want to study about the book of Revelation. They want to hear it, particularly now, more than ever. And so I thank you to all of you who watch, and whether live or on the replay. It is available, Logan tells me, at worldviewtube.com now, worldviewtube.com. Joining me is Colonel Rob Maness. We get an update from Aaron because there's been a terrorist attack not only in Germany, but there's been one in Israel, in the very town Aaron lives in. We'll be joined by Aaron in just a minute. So, Colonel, let's say America, Colonel Rob Maness, by the way, each and every day at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. RobManess.com is his website, by the way, robmaness.com, and you'll find him on social media as well. So, Colonel, let's say America pulls out of NATO. And, by the way, President Trump's meeting, if he hasn't already, with key people about maybe just pulling all the funding from Kiev. Some of it, I think, was approved during the Biden regime. But let's say we pull out of NATO. Therefore, Article 5 doesn't get triggered. Could you see all the articles about Operation Dragonfly, the stories about China or Russia, at one time targeting our power grid, our water treatment systems, and cyber attacks? Could you see all of that being used to then give a narrative, credibility, that we got attacked by Russia, when it wasn't Russia at all? It was just those narratives, those facts being used for false flags in the country to then bring pressure and even ridicule. The Secretary of Defense told his team to stop concentrating on Russia, but to focus more on China and Iran. And now, while these guys weren't paying attention, we get hit by Russia. You could kind of see this all backfiring if we're not very careful. How do you see the deep staters trying, and the globalists trying to draw America in if they can't trigger us involved with Article 5 because we've pulled out of NATO?
Well, they're telegraphing pretty clearly, and you touched on some of it. The so-called policy letter headline from Pete Hegseth that says we're gonna turn away from our cyber monitoring policies on Russia and focus more on China. CISA, the organization responsible for that policy, has already put out 2 memos, I think, in the last 48 hours. Since that news first broke. It said, no, that's incorrect. It's false. We are not changing our policy. We're constantly on watch for cyber attacks from all places, including Russia. And cyber is how they're going to conduct the attack on something like our grid, as you mentioned, with Dragonfly. They're already inside a lot of our electronics when it comes to these things. And the grid is controlled by digital controls. So that's there, too. The other thing is, again, we go back to illegal immigration and the illegal aliens, 12 million or so that came through the southern border and other various means under the Biden administration, added to another 25 million before that. They're not all Chinese military age males. I guarantee you that. We know many of them are on the Islamist terrorist watch list. They're on other watch lists. So do you think the Russian intelligence organizations aren't sending anybody through? Not to mention our own friends and allies that have come into the country and conduct their operations on us. So that is where I would look for it to come from. Either way, whether we're in NATO or not, one of these types of false flag operations can be used in order to try to trigger a response from the United States. But the Europeans need to tread very carefully. While I think it's great that President Trump's meeting has actually gotten the Europeans to step up and come together and start saying things like, we're going to take responsibility for our own defense, they're not capable of it on their own right now, and they know that. So they're leaning very far forward, like this idea that Starmer put out just last night about putting British troops boots on the ground inside Ukraine. They're going to try to lean very far forward in order to get the United States to remain and maybe even commit more to this war without bringing it to an end. And believe me, Brandon, it's not just the Europeans that want us to stay involved in this. This guy, Zelinsky, he had pre-meetings with all the U.S. senators that have been supporting him. And I don't know if you saw the video from that meeting. You know, he's very plain in that meeting saying, hey, we're all friends, have been friends for a very long time. I appreciate your very strong support. And he's looking across the table at my senator, the Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman, Roger Wicker. So those senators are opposed to this peace plan the way Donald Trump has it laid out also. And it's a big problem because the Trump administration is facing enemies from all quarters, enemies to its policies from all quarters, including the so-called allies inside the United States that are supposed to be on our team. That's why this transition period, we are still in it. Everybody sees that he got his cabinet approved, but that's just the very beginning. They can't do anything adequately until the team is finished being filled out by those cabinet members. Tulsi Gabbard needs to have a full-up intelligence team across the intelligence community in order to stop this false flag that we're talking about, and that hasn't happened yet.
And so you and I don't rehearse our shows. So you study the news every morning, doing your show prep, I study mine, and we get together, we talk. So isn't this interesting? I'm saying, well, look at these articles I'm finding this morning that can be used to say, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says, don't pay attention to Russia anymore, cyber concerns, pay attention to China and Iran. And you're saying that these, again, are what are my concerns, and you're verifying, these are fake headlines. So they're already manufacturing the narrative. These people are so predictable if you know what to look for, right? So you and I are already watching this morning and saying, we are seeing the narrative being laid. And all you got to do is watch the narrative coming from their mouthpieces, which is the mainstream corporate media. And so when I see these headlines, I'm like, well, there you go. There you go. We've got a narrative now. Now wait until we have a so-called terrorist attack or cyber attack, and they quickly blame it on Russia and say it was the Trump administration's fault. So isn't that interesting? You and I are tracking on the same path already, which again, all the people that say, oh, wow, look at this. Donald Trump is elected. Everything is, we're back. We're so back, as people kept putting on social media. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing in the world to be saying. We are so far from being back, as you just laid out. We don't even have our full Donald Trump intelligence community up and running yet. And Americans, many of them think, oh, I guess I didn't need to buy all that prepper stuff. I didn't need to get ready for a power grid down. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're probably at a more dangerous time now than we were during the Biden years because these globalists had a puppet in the White House. The Islamists had a puppet in the White House. Now they have an obstacle and they need to use terrorism, cyber attacks, disruption to throw President Trump off like they did with COVID. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're right. And as I said, we're at a very weak time because we have the leadership of Trump's cabinet in place, but we don't have anything all the way down to the field level like what's needed. And the evidence of that is all around you. Look at the evidence that's coming out about the FBI not giving all of the documents on the Epstein case to Pam Bondi in the Department of Justice when they were ordered to do that. Well, Kash Patel's the pick that all of MAGA and Donald Trump wanted to be the director of FBI. He's even got Dan Bongino as his deputy director. It doesn't even have to be confirmed, but they don't have everything done and all the team built all the way down to the field office level, and that's what has to happen. So we're at a very precarious time. People need to be paying very close attention, and believe me, they're not just setting up one potential false flag. They're going to try multiple avenues of approach on this and multiple different operations because they know that not just one will work if successful, and one successful one may not trigger that. So they have to do it. They're going to do it. It's in progress. You're seeing it right before your eyes. We have to defend against that and defend against the desire to want to hit back right away when it's not clear what exactly happens in one of these incidents. And as you mentioned, there's already been another vehicle terrorist attack in Germany again this morning, and then the attack in Israel that you mentioned just when we came on.
Yeah, we're going to get to the one in Israel. Logan, I think you have some B-roll of the attack in Germany probably. Some of it we can't show, and I won't show it. It's lunch hour for many. But one of the pictures on line people can find is a individual lost their leg in the car attack. And if the report is accurate, there was a leg laying in the street. Now, again, we have a terrorist attack in Israel, in Aaron, our reporter on the ground in Israel, his hometown. Martin Armstrong has a very interesting article. I put it up over at worldviewreport.com, worldviewreport.com. Europe is falling. Economist Martin Armstrong warns that's why they need war with Russia. He's saying because they all are facing the collapse of the European Union. The debt is just unbelievable. They never consolidated. Between COVID, climate change, and sanctions on Russia, the German economy has shrunk 3% to 5%. The economic growth of the EU is appalling. Europe is falling, and this is why they need war. So they're backing Zelinsky, end quote. He went on to say, in this report, I gathered a bunch of headlines. London Financial Times. What's the headline? America is now the enemy of the West. This is why Trump is saying we're out. Zelinsky has admitted that 58% of the $350 billion the U.S. gave him is missing. You cut the funding, and you're going to find out the truth. Trump should cut every single penny, bring it all out. Zelinsky is counting on Europe to replace the United States. This is why he's so arrogant. Trump should get out of NATO ASAP. Right now, I'm concerned about May 15th on. Our computer says Europe is going into war, and I put it into this report, Europe will lose. This is why gold is coming to America. We'll get a response from Colonel Manus, and then our reporter on the ground who had a terrorist attack in his hometown. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WWWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk at the top of the hour with your host, Jim Schneider, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s on over 100 outlets nationwide. By the way, we had to pick up last week 4,000 more business cards because so many of you are ordering them. You guys asked for them. And so we did, after having to spend a while catching up on other things, get some printed. We did color, full color, double-sided business cards. There's business card sizes, and you can easily put them in your shirt pocket, guys, ladies, your handbag. And if you're out and about with family and friends you run into, or people you run into at the grocery store or a restaurant, you're visiting, whatever, you say, hey, I think you'd enjoy listening to this show, and hand them a card, all right? You can get those free of charge at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Hey, don't forget, we're coming to Milwaukee. And that's Tuesday evening, April 15th. Dr. Andy Woods, myself, and our reporter on the ground in Israel will be with us, Aaron Lavarco. Found out last week on the air he's going to be in the States. We're like, well, why don't you come join us? He said, oh, yeah, I can do that if it's the middle of the week. So all three of us, we moved the start time back to 6:30 to 9:30 at the Waukesha Expo Center. Now, it's free, but you do need to register so that we have a seat for everyone, because we're charged like $2 a seat, so we don't want to have seats out that we don't need, but you also don't want to have too few. So please register. And if you register, you got to register every person. Go in and register yourself. Use the same email address. Go back in, register your spouse. Use the same email address. Go back in, register your friend or family member. Every time, just put in their name. But use the same email address over and over. Just put in a different name of the person. All right. Last I checked, what are we, about 800 registered, Logan? So it's moving quickly. Worldviewtube.com/events. Will you tweet about it? Let's pack it out. I'm talking the bottom floor, the top floor. Let's pack it out, folks. Worldviewtube.com/events for full details. Worldviewtube.com/events. April 15th. All right, joining me again is Colonel Rob Maness, robmaness.com. Each and every day he's heard live and on demand at worldviewtube.com. All right, Colonel, let's pick it up where we left off. Any comment on what I was talking about before we went to break?
Well, again, Brandon, this is the world we live in. We have to be on the watch. We need watchers on the wall. And unfortunately, it's up to us civilians that are out here to maintain vigilance on these issues, because you can't count on the inside working machinery of the United States government and our intelligence apparatus to help keep us safe anymore. I was reading an ex-post from, I think it was James Wood this morning, and he said that he and his wife sat down, talked late into the night last night, and they realized that that all of the things they've counted on their entire lives, the police, the fire department, the ambulance, the infrastructure of their government from the local to the federal level, no longer is reliable enough to even be considered in adequate existence, and they're on their own. Unfortunately, that's where we are, and we have to maintain vigilance and watch out for these kinds of things.
And that's why, I was saying to people, just because something doesn't come to pass that we're concerned about or worried about, China going after Taiwan, then maybe going after America with a cyber attack to distract us while they're going after Taiwan, whatever the different scenarios are, just because they don't materialize or because Donald Trump gets elected doesn't mean you say, oh, I shouldn't have been preparing. I shouldn't, I was stupid of me. No, I say the longer something big goes from happening, the bigger the event is likely going to be. It's going to be like a pressure cooker, and then it's going to fly. And I just say, keep your prepper gear ready. Keep your food, ammunition, guns, everything good and ready to go in an emergency. Because as you just heard the colonel say, can't rely on your government anymore. At the local level, even, it's sad. Your local police folks would be so overwhelmed if there was multiple events that happen in your town. You have one event take place, God forbid, like we've had in our community, where there's I guess it was a former employee a few years ago, went into a grocery store. Pretty much every police officer on duty that day went to that grocery store. All right, and that could be a distraction while they then go after the school or an elementary school or a daycare. You see what I'm saying, folks? Don't think the terrorists have not studied America's first responders and know how to distract them while they go and do something else, or draw them all in with a terrorist attack, and then there's secondary terrorist attack once all of them get there. Right? And now all of a sudden, now you've got your own first responders out of commission. What's your town going to do? I'm not trying to be a little black rain cloud. I'm just saying, they can take out our first responders very quickly, where they either cannot respond to multiple events or any events for some time, depending on what occurs, which is why you've got to be self-sufficient. But I go back real quick to the economist, Armstrong Williams, warning Europe is in major trouble financially and they need to go to war. And he's saying this is one reason why the gold is coming back to America. Some of our people understand you better get your gold out of the UK. Just keep following it. Hey, let's add into the conversation real quick Aaron Lavarco, our reporter on the ground in Israel, because as the colonel said, we've not only had a terrorist attack in Germany today, we've had one in Israel. And I text with my morning coffee this morning, trying to wake up. I see this and I text Aaron, are you okay? Isn't that where you live? And he says, yes. He joins us now, a reporter on the ground, Aaron Lavarco. Aaron, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you, Brandon and Colonel Rob.
Aaron, how far from your home was that man stabbed to death on video?
It's like it's a city very, very adjacent to where I am. It's like a few miles. Actually, last week there was one even closer, and that was the ramming attack that took place in Pardes Chana Karkor. So they are trying to find our weak spots. They're trying to find safe areas. This one was very, very different in the sense that it was done by a Druze man, albeit the reports are that he was mentally disturbed. But I'm really curious because over the last few days, our military have moved very, very close to Damascus. And we've made it clear to the new regime in Syria that you are not to go south of Damascus, number one. And number two, we have an ally. And the ally that we have are the Druze people and the Druze community. And we've made it clear. We're going to defend them. We have a number of Druze. We have about 50,000 Druze that live in Israel. But surprisingly, it was a Druze man who did the attack today. And I wonder whether someone from our enemies took him and maybe he was sent. I could be looking for something that's not there, but it's just surprising that out of all the people to make a terrorist attack, it's a Druze man. Druze people are not violent. They are not terrorists. They actually are very, very close to Israelis. So this is a big shock. It's a big surprise. And the Druze community are distancing themselves from the man who is now dead. He was eliminated. They're saying we will not be having a funeral for him. We will not be attending his funeral. But sadly, in the meantime, there was a 70-year-old man that was murdered in that terrorist attack. And so his family and the community there are mourning. He also was a Druze man.
Wow.
So terrible. Yeah.
Let me interrupt real quick. Colonel, respond to this. We'll let you go so you can do your show prep. U.S. announces $3 billion in pending arms sales to Israel, including armored bulldozers. So they're going to scrape the Gaza. Israeli government approves call up of 400,000 reserve soldiers amid uncertainty over Gaza ceasefire. These are all at worldviewreport.com. Comment on these two stories, sir, before we let you go to get ready for your show.
Well, Brandon, I think it's clear that the Israeli government and their armed forces have to eliminate the threat from Gaza. And to eliminate it, it's going to have to be cleared. The armored bulldozers is a big indicator. And you know what? Those animals, those savages that conducted October 7th and continue to resist instead of just laying down their arms and unconditionally surrendering and moving on, can deserve this. They deserve it. I look forward to it happening. I fully support it. And I'm glad you said arms sales to Israel, because I don't want people to think that we give free stuff to Israel
right.
so it can defend itself. we have agreements to where they can buy things that they purchase because that's the way the law works in this country. The government has to be involved when you're talking about military arms sales, but not because we're giving something away. It's because they are legally purchasing it, and they need it in order to defend themselves. Of course, I support their inherent right to self-defense, and that's what is happening right now. I support Ukraine's inherent right to self-defense. I just don't support giving billions and billions of American resources into a lost cause. I think there needs to be a peace agreement, and immediately. But in the Gaza situation, no peace is available until this threat is completely eliminated one way or the other, and I totally agree with it.
Well said, Colonel. Colonel Rob Maness, robmaness.com, worldviewtube.com, each and every day, produced by WorldviewTube, on demand and live. Colonel, we'll let you go and get ready for that broadcast. Thank you for your service and your time today, Colonel.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. I look forward to having you on my show tomorrow as my guest to talk about the AP and Reuters.
I'm looking forward to that as well. Colonel Rob Maness checking in, and we got some big things coming up for the Colonel and us in regard to a cool location we're going to go to soon. I'm not going to say when, but soon. A very cool location, historic and cool. And I think the Colonel might be able to join us. He showed interest in, and with his Air Force background, it'd be important to have him there. That'll keep you on the edge of your seats. All right, let's go back to our guest. Let's go to Aaron. Aaron, I want your comments on this. 400,000 reserve soldiers being called up amid uncertainty over Gaza ceasefire.
Brandon, we have a new Chief of General Staff, Eyal Zamir. And let me tell you what I've been hearing and reading about him. He is a no-nonsense officer, general, soldier. He is going to be firing a number of people. Top generals is the word out. He's going to be firing. He is cleaning up shop. And it was proposed to him a number of things to do, and he is saying no. He is really going to beef up our security. Now, this is one big first step. Not only did we first call up 50,000 and our Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, but now 400,000. Why, Brandon? Why? It's clear. We've had enough. It's time that we clean up. It's time that this war is finished. And it may mean we may not get back all of our almost 60 captives, living and dead. The negotiations are still going on. Bibi Netanyahu has asked that we get about 10. So the negotiations are going on. But in the meantime, our defense forces, they're getting ready. 400,000. This is unprecedented. And so Hamas their days.
Hold right there. Aaron LaBarco, phone lines are now open as well. 1-800-347-9829. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, let's go to the phone lines. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions on any of these. 1-800-347-9829. Real quick, back to Aaron, our reporter on the ground in Israel, brought to you by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. We make regular love offerings to him for all of his broadcasts that he brings to us all hours of the day and night. And again, he'll be with us live in person. That's the plan right now. April 15th at the Waukesha Expo Center. Full details at worldviewtube.com/events. worldviewtube.com/events. We're going to go to the phone lines here real quick. 400,000 reservists. When was the last time you had this many called up? Was that right after October 7th or what?
No, this is even bigger, Brandon.
Wow.
I think this is even bigger. This is far more. There were about that number that returned home from overseas on October the 8th and the 9th. Incredible. In about 48 hours, that number moved back. But as far as being called up, this is a different level. And now, psychologically, we're letting Hamas know this is it. Your days are numbered. But again, the big question is what's going to happen to the Gaza Strip, Brandon, once we take it over?
Wow.
And but this is a major operation. Can you imagine? That's almost 500,000 people, soldiers.
Crazy.
Going in.
I want to go to a caller real quick, number 4. It's an anonymous caller, and I don't know what he or she are going to say, but it's about the shooting on Saturday. I don't know if many of you know that there was a cheerleading competition in Texas, and there was a stampede, and the media is trying to tell us that some were trying to say there was no shooting, but a lot of people that were there were saying, no, I think there was a shooting. So this is a very interesting call. Anonymous on line 4 from Texas. Thank you for calling in today.
Absolutely. I am just sick over the amount of lies that are going on. This company makes $64 million, actually over $64 million over the weekend. On Saturday, there was a fight that broke out, but the fight is on video. There was no polls in the Omni Hotel where they said the polls fell. Thousands of people heard gunshots. There was 30,000 people in attendance at that exact time. People ran for their lives. There was multiple police, Marines. People know what gunshots sound like, especially in Texas. Somebody saw the shooter, saw it directly, and the Dallas police are saying, no, that didn't happen. The competition's saying, no, that didn't happen. There was athletes injured. I was on the scanner page. It sounded like they had... There was one cop that said, needing ambulance, sitting here with a lady with 2 broken legs. It was like 30 minutes later. There was still no ambulance there. And it's just infuriating, and I don't know why they're covering it up other than money and greed, but it has traumatized our industry. There was over 100,000 people in attendance at this competition, over 10,000 cheerleaders, there. And to lie to these people and to lie to these kids is just infuriating. I don't know what's going on other than greed.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you called in because we were watching these reports go down live and following on social media as quick as they were coming in. And now after the fact, of course, we have young ladies and as well as parents and people that were there saying the media's lying. There were gunshots. We heard them.
There were gunshots. You're talking ages 4 to 18, children running for their lives. No cell phone. The cell phones weren't working. One of my cheer coaches brought 4 kids with her that she didn't even know. They ran to the highway. They jumped in somebody's car that they did not know for safety. The cops kept saying, hide, hide, hide. And then they would say, run, 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 duck, run. And then they would say, hide. And then they would say, run. There was no plan of action. It was a huge stampede. People got trampled. It was horrific.
You were there.
Covering something. Something's not right.
And you were there, correct?
I was not there. My coach was there. One of my coaches were there. And when I had some cheer parents there that went to go watch. And they said that they said the same thing. Like, we shoot guns all the time. That we know what gunshots sound like versus a pole falling. Yes, some poles fell, but that was after the stampede.
So and some poles. I'll make sure our audience...
There's no poles.
I want to make sure our audience understands poles. Some poles supposedly fell over in the stampede, which were loud bangs, but that was after the people that were there heard gunshots and the stampede started. Then the poles got knocked over, and they're trying to say that was what people heard. People are saying no.
Two separate things, separate incidences. And you can hear, there's videos of people sitting outside. You can hear the gunshots. Pop, 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 pop. And then somebody said, the shooter's down. One of the dads who saw the gun being pulled with another guy, he went and hid his family, and then the other guy said, we can't let this happen. There are 10,000 cheerleaders out there. He said, are you ready? And the guy said, I'm ready. And they were going to attack that guy without any weapons. They were going to go get him. And they after they hid their family, you cannot make this stuff up. Why
Wow.
would he be lying about that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you called. Will you call back with any updates, please?
Yes, I absolutely will.
And in fact, if you want to get put on hold, VCY, you can give her my cell number. She can text me. We'll keep you anonymous if you want to text us with any updates as well.
Yes, I definitely want to keep anonymous because this company that's making the 64 plus million has sued multiple people for being a monopoly. They have sued. They are a dirty, dirty company. They're owned by Bin Capital, and they are dirty as they come.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. Feel free to give her our cell phone number. She can communicate. We'll keep her anonymous. I'm glad she called in, folks, because I didn't. That's a first-hand report right there. There you go. And a lot of you maybe don't even know what we're talking about, but now you do. Let's go to Landry, line 1. Landry, thank you for calling in, Landry.
Landy, yeah. Hey,
Landy.
real quick, I know you're getting close to the end of the show. On this whole thing with Zelinsky, there was another report, I don't know if you caught it, but that Zelinsky had met with the Democrats prior
That's right.
to sitting in with President Trump and Vice President Vance, and they had told Zelinsky, do not accept the deal. Do not accept it.
And
that's why he
Lindsey
went in there
Graham,
like he did.
and Lindsey Graham was out in front of the White House saying, I warned him not to take the bait. And people are saying, was it a setup then? No, I think they knew there was a couple options of where it could go, and they let it play out. So I think they had plans. Was it a setup? No, I think Zelinsky just did what he's known to do, and they let him do it. But obviously, Lindsey Graham knew that they were going to try to push him a little bit to see what would spill over and out of him. And so he must have known something. Otherwise, why would he have told Zelinsky, don't take the bait? So again, who are these guys rooting for? Great point, Landy. Jim in Joplin, Missouri. Go quick, Jim. We'll get you in. Go, Jim.
Yeah, Brandon, I just wanted to see if you would comment on a story that I saw this morning about this Norwegian fuel company that is now refusing to refuel the U.S. military ships and submarines that move through their area.
I don't think I have seen that, believe it or not. So, Jim, thank you for that. I'll go look that up. I'm going to have Colonel Rob Maness on my show tonight, so I'll definitely ask him about that. Thank you, Jim. Jim from Joplin. Aaron, hold right there, Aaron. Aaron is our reporter on the ground in Israel, lighttothenationsministry.com. And again, brought to you by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. All right, folks, terrorism in Germany, terrorism in Israel, and they're trying, the Europeans, to provoke World War III. Not much in the news today, is it? Stay tuned for Crosstalk. Take care. And that's our broadcast on those stations. We're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida. And of course, you here at Worldview Tube. All right, Aaron, let's go back to you. How many more hostages alive do you guys think you have? How many do you know are deceased? And where are we at with that?
I think the number now is about 34, Brandon, that are alive. And the negotiations are, we are asking for half of them, the next stage, half of them to be returned. If they are not returned within the next 10 days, then we will continue the war. Right now, the ceasefire is holding, but the message is very, very clear. You better bring back these hostages. Yeah.
What about Judea and Samaria? What's the latest there?
Judea and Samaria, we had our tanks going last week to Jenin and Tulkarem, places like that. There are almost daily incursions, and we are eliminating terrorists one by one. We've got undercover soldiers who are operating within the villages. It's a slow process going from place to place, but with the tanks on the ground there, we've upped the ante. We've really stepped up the situation there. I'll tell you where it's really, really getting interesting, Brandon, is on our northern border. I mentioned earlier that we have made it clear. We told the new Syrian regime, you are not to come below Damascus. Our forces, Brandon, are only about I think it's about 10 or 15 miles from Damascus. We talk a lot about that prophecy which says Damascus one day will cease to exist. And it's just interesting we're getting close there. Now, the other player we've been warning, but now they are really stepping up the ante, is Turkey. Turkey do not like the fact that Israel are in Syria. They are very upset about it. They, of course, are right behind this new Syrian regime, HTS and Julani. And let me remind the public that this new Syrian regime, where they come from, they're ISIS and Al-Qaeda people. And they're coming across as very moderate. Let's see what their actions do. I wouldn't trust them for a minute. But Israel they're close to Damascus, number one. And number two, we've taken over the whole Mount Hermon. We are stationed in about 5 key bases inside of Syria and Lebanon. It is when you think of October the 7th or even October the 6th and what the Middle East looked like, and you look at it now, it's totally changed. And Israel is taken over a lot of ground, which, as I said, the Turks are very upset about it. Now, the Iranians, it's been proved that their goal as the kingpin and their firing proxies, it has not worked. Iran have been exposed. They are weak. Their money, their finance is very, very weak. Things are about to heat up again, but with our calling up of our troops, which is a strategic plan, us moving further inside of Syria and Lebanon, there's going to be so many more twists and turns, but I think it's a very interesting stage that it's sitting in. We've talked many times about the war of Gog and Magog, but I would keep my eye on Turkey. I've been listening to ex-generals from the Israeli military. They are saying that, Russia, who used to have their foot inside of Syria, and they still have a little bit, Turkey are the ones, they want those raw materials and those natural resources inside of Syria. And if it came down to a showdown between Turkey and Russia, because they don't really like each other, that the Turks by far are stronger than Russia in that region. So, I really haven't said what is happening now so much, but again, the pieces of the chess pieces are moving around. We got to keep our eyes on that situation. We got to pray as well. And the other thing is in the very south, the Houthis, who've been relatively quiet. They said when the ceasefire began, they said, okay, there's a ceasefire, we're going to keep quiet. But now that there's talk of the Israeli forces being called up, they are saying if it goes back to war, we are going to get back on the stage. But they've forgotten that the Americans, they're in town as well.
All right.
Let's see what happens.
Our reporter on the ground, Aaron Navarco. Thank you, Aaron. Take care, folks.
Thanks, Brandon.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years.